what I'm doing, but I had great leadership that kind of helped me understand that there are things in my leadership. My boss said, I know there are things that you don't know. I came into the interview with like 30 questions, and my boss is like, you have more questions than anybody I've ever hired in my life. And at the end of the day, he says, I know you don't know everything that you will need to know, but that's why you have support. And so that's why we need to lean into things like this weekend and our church leadership and marriage stuff like Marriage Matters, because that gives us the support that we need. So how do we become good managers? We have to start with what the Bible says, right? In Proverbs 9, 10, and 12, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For though wisdom, your days will be many and your years will be added to your life. If you are wise, your wisdom will reward you. If you are a mocker, you alone will suffer. And so if we want to be wise managers, we've got to go back to the Word of God first. So there are issues that I have dealt with throughout my marriage at different times and in different years. One of my main issues was defensiveness. I didn't want to admit that I was wrong. I wanted to be right, and so many times I would make Tara feel like she was the one that was wrong. And part of it is I didn't want to be a failure. I didn't want to think that I was falling short or failing in my marriage. And what I didn't realize is that this area of deflection actually hurt Tara, and it hurt our relationship. And I'm going to guess that that's not an area of struggle that I alone struggle with, right? I think the more, especially in marriage ministry, the more people that I talked to, the more men that I worked with, the more I realized that this was a common struggle. And one of the things that you won't hear us say it publicly very much, but one of the things on the back end of our podcast that we're trying to do with every episode is to normalize struggle and maximize hope. Because once you realize that you're not the only one that's struggling, then that infuses hope into your relationship, and to realize there's no unique struggle. And it's a beautiful thing to realize that your person sitting next to you who looks like they have the perfect marriage is probably struggling in very similar ways that you are struggling. And one of the things in Reengage that we learned early on was responsibility and our ability to respond in a way that is God-honoring. So in your marriage, you can react and you can respond, right? And in my early marriage, and I still struggle at times, I was a reactor instead of a responder. And we're going to talk through how to respond in a way that's more God-honoring, and some things that I have put into practice in my life that have actually made a huge difference. So when I came to WCIC, I was working for WBGL. That's where I first met Pastor Paul. And I was working out of my home. I had a studio up in Chicagoland, and I was doing all the music programming for CIC, BGL, and we had IBI at the time. And so I was in this market about once or twice a month, but I was working out of my basement, and I had begun to call it the dungeon. Because I love people, I wanted to be with people, and this is where I kind of fell into this lie that I wasn't a leader, that I didn't have to worry about leading because I worked out of my basement all by myself. And this actually bled into my marriage as well. So in 2020, I was asked to come on with WCIC, and I moved here and I got to lead a team and realized how different that really is, being with a team of people every week, and I love it, by the way, but as opposed to being in the basement. And so I realized that there are things that are in our control, and taking responsibility for our own attitudes and behaviors does make a big difference. And so here are the 5 practices, and I've learned a lot of this through the management role that I'm in now. And so this is being a wise manager, and if I had a screen, I would put manager and MAN in all caps, right? Because you are a manager of your marriage. You are a leader in your marriage. So there are 5 Ds. And what I want to do is use these Ds to replace dysfunction in our marriage. So the first one is to have a healthy marriage and be a wise manager of our marriage, we have to deal with our own junk, right? We have to be willing to deal with our own stuff. As a manager, it's easy to look around and see the team and see where their problems are and identify and understand their problems. All people struggle in very similar ways. But I can't lead well if I haven't first gotten the emotional and spiritual health that I need. If I'm not healthy, my team is not healthy. I actually become a toxic leader, and I have a toxic team. I think about has anybody ever flown before? Is anybody nervous about flying these days? Just, there's something that, when you're on an airplane, what's one of the very first things that happens before you fly? When you're on the plane, you're getting ready to back out of the gate, a stewardess comes up, right? And they tell you what to happen in case. And what's one of the things that they tell you about the mask? The mask will fall out if take care of yourself first. Sounds selfish, doesn't it? Like, man, my kid's right here. Why wouldn't I take care of them? Because if you aren't healthy and you pass out because you don't have oxygen, you're not going to be able to take care of your child. So you got to be able to take care of your own stuff first. Carey Nieuwhof said, I don't know a single effective, Carey Nieuwhof is an incredible leader. He's got a podcast too if you ever want to check it out. But I don't know a single effective leader who hasn't been to counseling in some form or kind. I'm not making that up. If you don't deal with your own personal junk, your issues and baggage, you will harm not only yourself, but the people you love and the people you lead. Deal with your issues. Your kids, spouse, and the people you lead will thank you. They'll be very grateful. So first, we have to deal with our own stuff. So what does that look like? Being a wise manager at home is even more important than being a good leader at your job. It doesn't mean that you have to be in counseling, but it might be a good idea to at least find someone like a pastor or a mentor, someone you can trust to be able to share the things that you're dealing with. Start by opening up with someone who can help you heal and can help you grow. One of my key things to this, a key ingredient that they have to have, is an active, growing relationship with Jesus. I'm not going to trust someone with that kind of leadership in my life if I don't see the fruit of their relationship with Jesus. Right. So that for me is a non-starter. So as people are investing in you, and we'll talk a little bit about how I have people that are investing in me and people that I invest in. Investing in people is a little bit different, but if there are people investing in you, you have to be on the same page in their relationship with Jesus. Maybe it's counseling. Maybe it's a recovery group. There are some incredible recovery groups. There are some great things going on at this church. This program, Marriage Matters, this weekend. These are kinds of things that their resources are out there. Now, as a husband, we cannot love our wives well when we're carrying around stuff from our past. Baggage, we're hooked to us. We cannot love them the way that God has called us to. In fact, our dysfunctions will have the greatest impact on our wives and kids. There are a lot of people, and there's a lot of study about this. You can be an incredibly successful leader. You can make a lot of money, be successful, find all kinds of success in your workspace. But a lot of those leaders have terrible relationships at home. Their marriages are all falling apart. They have multiple marriages. Their kids won't talk to them. The real indicator of success is when the people closest to you, you have a good relationship with them. And honestly, for you to be healthy and for you to have the fulfillment that God wants in your life, including God, you have to be close to the people that are closest to you. And so that's one of our responsibilities. I dealt with a lot of pain and issues in my past, a lot of obstacles, and a lot of hard work to get to where Tara and I are today. People look at us, the reason our podcast is called Behind Our Smiles is because we've had so many people throughout, especially the last 10, 15 years of our marriage, say, wow, it looks like you have the perfect marriage. If only my wife would do that, or if only my husband. And we're like, wait a minute, we don't have the perfect marriage. We struggle. There's no unique struggle. So Behind Our Smiles came out of this idea that anybody on Facebook? How many times have you seen Facebook and turned it off and been like, my life is so miserable. I wish I had that, right? Or you see the perfect Christmas picture of a family. Have you ever wondered what happened like right before that picture was taken or like right afterwards? And sometimes you'll see people share those photos and they're awesome. because you're like, that's me, I get it. So I totally lost my train of thought. Please forgive me. But anyway, Behind Our Smiles came out of that idea that we wanted people to have a glimpse into our marriage to say, hey, we do smile a lot and there's a ton of joy in our marriage, but it didn't just come. It's not just there. And there's a lot of work behind those smiles. The other thing that I realized was Tara, when she said I do to me, and your wife did the exact same thing, she put all of her eggs in your basket. So in theory, now you can't be her savior, don't get me wrong. But one of the things that God brought to my attention is, Tara, there are things that Tara needs that only I can give her as her husband. There are things that only God can give her. So you cannot replace her savior. And honestly, I made that mistake as a husband. I wanted her to fill that role. And I had expectation that she would fill that role. And that actually hurt our marriage because she cannot fill that role and you can't fill that role for her. But there is a role as a husband that you can fill for her. And there are certain things that you can give your wife that she cannot get from anyone else. And that's why it's important for us to be healthy so that we can give those things. Ephesians 4:20 says, but that it is not the way you learned Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him as the truth in Jesus, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and be renewed by the spirit of your minds. So I think about that, to be created in the likeness of God, to be renewed. And that's an ongoing thing. I wish we could just arrive. Wouldn't it be funny? Hey, take this class and you'll have it all figured out. But it's a constant getting before God and renewing. Taking care of your own junk, what does that look like? So in practical terms, we talked about forgiveness last night. And I honestly believe forgiveness is a key ingredient to the healing process. I think sometimes we have a different expectation on forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean I have to have a relationship with that person. I have to even have contact with that person. But it is important for me to release it to God and to let that go and not want revenge or want things to be a certain way, just to let God work those things out. Other examples, and unforgiveness can show up in your marriage too. So maybe you have hurt each other. I can pretty much guarantee it, if you've been married for longer than 5 minutes, you probably have hurt each other. So I think the attitude of forgiveness is extremely important, to always be willing to forgive. And one of the things that we did in our marriage, and I don't even remember where we learned this, we learned it early on, and we taught our kids the same thing, but forgiveness this is what it looks like. I'm really sorry, but why am I sorry? I'm not sorry that you're upset. That's not right. I'm not sorry that you figured it out. I'm really sorry that I talked to you in that way, right? There's an example, there's a sentence that goes with it, and it's heartfelt. And sometimes I have to pray first because I'm not in the right frame of mind to ask for forgiveness. I'm sorry that I talked to you in that way. Will you please forgive me? And my wife does not say, that's okay. She says, I forgive you. And so we've worked that out, and that's really important because the Bible tells us not to go to bed or not to go to sleep on our anger, right? To work things out. And that doesn't mean that sometimes it's like, I got to get up in the morning, we're going to have to pause this conversation. But it means that I want to make sure that I haven't left a hurt in her through this experience. So I want to get that fixed as quickly as possible. And that's also healthy for me. Any sin struggles or addiction. Anything, and this is, the Bible says, search me. We can ask the Holy Spirit to search us, and he will. So there's some things that we're not even aware of. I was really addicted to movies. It was my escape all the time. I was trying to hurry my time with my wife so I could go watch a movie or I could go do other things. And God just kind of convicted me on that. No, you're addicted to this. You need to let this go, and you need to make sure that you're giving time to your wife and kids. Recognizing our own weakness that we bring into our marriage doesn't make us bad people, doesn't make us failures, but to recognize our weakness and to be able to identify that and to be able to talk that through with a mentor and your spouse is really important. Being vulnerable with your wife about the things that you're struggling with is extremely important. I know I felt like I was being a real man by not putting it on her shoulders, by not having her have to carry that or this or that. And I didn't realize I was doing her a major disservice. I was really hurting her. She wanted to be close to me, and I was putting a barrier up. And it's tough, and it starts with one step. You're not going to get it all figured out tomorrow. It literally starts with one step of saying, okay, God, what do you want me to share with my wife today? What have I been holding back? What have I been hiding? What am I so ashamed of? I'm afraid that she will not even think about me the same way. I need to be able to release that, God. How do you want me to go about that? Because those are the types of things that are holding you back. And I think as men, sometimes we can buy into this idea that we can rise above that. Like, oh yeah, you know what? For you, that's right. But for me, nah. I'm special in that way. I'll get it figured out. I'll be able to do it differently. But the truth is, it will catch us. It will catch you. And I always think about, like, how much time am I losing in hiding? Right? I look back on my marriage, and my marriage is great today, but I could have had 10 better years. I wasted 10 years. And so I really want to encourage you to say, hey, today's the day. I'm drawing a line in the sand, and I'm not going to let another day go by. John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us, cleanse us from all unrighteousness, right? So first it's going before God and saying, God, I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. And I'm sorry for blank. Please forgive me. And the Bible says that. Here's a really cool thing. I just want to stop on this for a minute because I just did a deep dive into Matthew 18. And I have a pastor in the room, so I'm always nervous when I do this stuff. But so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I did a deep dive into Matthew 18. And when Peter says to Jesus, how many times should we forgive? There's a frustration right there, right? 7 times. Jesus says 70 times 7. What I really believe was going on in that instance was there is no number, because there's never a number 2. If I go to Jesus and I say, Jesus, forgive me for talking meanly to my wife, and I'm sincere about it and I ask for that forgiveness, if I go back 10 minutes later, that's the first time that he's forgiving me. So there's no number. And so I think Jesus was trying to say, if you are truly forgiving, and understand that this is, I don't have time today to go into this whole thing, so talk to Pastor if there's a situation in your life where that forgiveness looks a little bit different because there's current active pain or wrongdoing happening. When there's current abuse or criminal actions, those kinds of things, you still have to forgive, but you have to walk through that slightly different. We're talking about stuff in your marriage of, I almost could end there because I think that is so important, just dealing with our own stuff. So some questions that I ask myself regularly are, am I pursuing my own relationship with God?
Exactly.
And what does that pursuit look like? So for me, and this may not work for you, but I'm gonna just share a little bit of my life with you. I'm up 3 hours before I leave for work. I arrive at work at 8:30. And here's what I do at those 3 hours. I use an hour to get ready. I don't need a full hour, but you get the idea. I have an hour with God. That's first. And I do an hour because many times my brain is all over the place, and it takes me 15 minutes to even get into a place, sometimes longer, to even get into a place where I'm actually with God. So I need a full hour. You may not need that much time. And then I have an hour with Tara. So an hour with God, I get ready, an hour with Tara, and we do coffee. And it's just a one-on-one check-in every day. What's going on? Sometimes we don't talk about a whole lot. We watch the rain fall and we just have a little ebb and flow conversation. Other times it's really intense. Steve's getting married. What are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? We got a podcast record this week. How are we going to do that? And we go over those kinds of things. But that hour, and we've been doing this for 15 years. And it has totally revolutionized our marriage. So I highly recommend be intentional. It could be 10 minutes. Be intentional. There was a study done 5 years ago, so it might be differently today because this was pre-COVID, so maybe 6 years ago. Any idea how much quality time husband and wife spend together in one given week? Anybody?
Just a few hours.
Few hours. Any other guesses?
Less than an hour?
Less than an hour. Any other guesses? 7 minutes. What did you say? 30 minutes. 7 minutes of meaningful conversation, because the wife's working, the husband's working, the kids, this, that, you're running from this to that. You think you're having meaningful conversations because you're saying, hey, what'd you have for lunch? Or what's for dinner? Or did the laundry get done? Or is the mortgage paid? Those aren't meaningful conversations. It's kind of like what Vicki was saying last night. When you go on a date, don't talk about your kids or finances. Meaningful conversation is extremely important. You fell in love with her, right? You married her because you wanted to spend time with her. When you were dating, did you have more than 7 minutes of meaningful conversation? How many times did you almost fall asleep on the phone? Oh yeah, I'm still awake. Me too. Right? You weren't talking about much of anything. It didn't matter. You just wanted to be with her. You can recultivate that by being with her. It is crazy how it works. One of the other things we learned in Re-Engage is that the feeling chases the behavior, not the other way around. We always think, hey, if I feel in love, then I'll act this way. If I feel romantically drawn, then I'll act this way. But what if it's the other way around? What if our feeling of being in love comes from the behavior, the commitment to say, I love you no matter what. And I'm going to spend time with you no matter what. If you set aside 20 minutes, 10 minutes a day, and you said to your wife, I want to commit to spending 10 minutes a day with you, you'll have to pick her up off the floor maybe. I'm not sure. I know when I started this with my wife, she was like, who are you? What did you do with my husband, right? But it was revolutionary. And the other question I'll ask myself a lot is, what other personal junk do I need to process in order to be the husband that God has made me to be? In order to love her the way that God would want me to love her. And one of the questions I ask is, God, help me see her through your eyes. Help me see this person the way that you love this person. And oh my goodness, that's scary, but it's awesome. And then, do I need to repent of anything? And that answer is always yes, but I need to ask the question. Do I need to apologize or forgive? Do I need to, anything I need to share honestly or vulnerably with my wife? So those are the questions that I ask on a regular basis. I don't always like the answers, just so you know, and there are times when I don't want to ask the question, but those questions are huge. Second D is to define reality. And this was Carrie Newsom. I did a bunch. When I took this job as station manager, I did all of these podcasts, all of these things, read these books, how to be a good leader, how to be a good leader, how to be a good leader. And one of the things that popped out a lot, and Carrie Newolf said it the best, is we, as a leader, we have to define reality. In fact, there are 3 things he says that we have to do as a leader. We have to define reality, we have to say thank you, and then everything in between is, how can I serve you? What can I do to serve? And I watched Pastor Paul last night empty tables of plates and take care of us. And it was really very cool to watch a servant leader at work. So we have to ask those questions. So an example in the office is, I have to ask the question, who's on my team? What are their strengths and weaknesses? Are they in the right seat on the bus? Are they being fulfilled in what they're doing? And the only way that I can do that is to check in with them regularly. So I have regularly scheduled one-on-ones. And some of the questions that I ask in those one-on-ones is, hey, what task lately brought you a lot of joy? What task was most draining for you? Doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to make adjustments there, but over time you begin to see a pattern. You begin to understand. Then you can make adjustments, because maybe there's someone else on the team that goes, that task brought me so much joy. And the other person is going, that task was so draining. And that task is on that person's plate. Maybe that needs to move to that person's plate. So it's looking at those, asking those types of questions. Another question I ask is there anything that I, as your leader, am doing that is stealing your joy or causing you to not be fulfilled? Is there anything that I'm doing? And that's a great question to ask your wife. Gary Smalley, I think it may be, yes, it's right here. I'm going to get to that because that was a very revolutionary moment for me. So in our overall structure, this is at work. Who are we? What's our budget? What's our impact? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the vision? Right? How can I accurately define who we are right now? So if the building is on fire, it is really important for me not to just stay in my office and say, go back to work, it's fine. Don't worry about it, everything's good. No, my job is to get them out of the building, right? To make sure everybody is okay and hey, there's a fire. So we have a keyword in our building and I can't tell you what it is. We have a keyword in our building and if that word is spoken in any way, question, whatever, immediately there is action that happens. We exit the building, we call 911. No matter what, we do not question it. So I'm very clear with my team. If you say that word, even in your sleep, if you fall asleep at your desk, you say that word, the police are coming. Because we just do not, you have to have a plan, right? You have to be able to define that. So we ask those questions. And when we're facing a problem and people are panicking, what is the first step? So one of the things that I've taught our team, and I've really worked with our team, is to be problem solvers. It doesn't really matter whose fault this is, and I'm gonna give you a quick example. We had a marriage celebration recently, sold out in 4 minutes, which is amazing. 10 days before the event in Springfield, and I know somebody here was at the Springfield event, but you were at it, right? Yep. 10 days before that event, we were calling, we had contracts, we were calling to confirm everything, and the venue told us, I've double booked you, and you're the oddball out. So we sold all those tickets, we had all the catering set up, everything was ready to go. And now we've got 150 couples that we're gonna have to change venues on. And is there gonna be a venue available? Well, my team, Drew is my listener engagement director, jumped right in and he had it solved in an hour. We had it figured out. In the past, when I first arrived, there would have been panic. People would be like, what do we do? How do we do this? It's your fault. No, it's your fault. Well, why didn't you do, you don't? But none of that, because in that moment, it didn't matter whose fault it was. It didn't matter, it had to get solved. And so in your marriage is the same thing. Sometimes we spend a lot of time saying it's your fault. No, it's your fault. But what about, instead of saying, okay, we need to figure out the fault so that we can make sure we don't make the same mistake again, right? But we need to problem solve now. Let's problem solve and then let's reflect to figure out how that problem happened so that it doesn't happen again. So as a husband, I need to be aware of the state of my marriage and my family. I can't close my eyes, cover my ears and hum and pretend that there's no fire. If I see smoke, I have to investigate it. Otherwise the house is gonna burn down, right? But what are the things that, like right now, how is my marriage? What is my wife really, what's going on with her really? And how do we do this together? Where are the weak spots? Where are the cracks? Where are the things that need to be identified? If I have water coming into my basement, I probably need to address that, right? Same in my marriage. Little water in the basement doesn't seem like it's gonna cause a lot of problems. Man, that could lead to some major issues. And am I not wanting to face reality because I'm being lazy? Or because I don't know how. And I think many times not knowing how is mistaken as being lazy. We're not really being lazy. We would do it if we knew how, but we don't want to admit that we don't know how because we don't want to. I don't know if you've ever been in your job for a while in a job and there's a task that you should know, but you don't know, and it comes up and you have to do it, but you don't know how to ask your boss because you've been at the job for a while and you don't want them to know. I had a situation where I actually called another station manager. I had been in the job for about a year and a half, and I thought I had done something illegal and not posting the employment posters that you're supposed to post publicly. I hadn't got the new ones and posted them, and I'd been there for over a year. And so the ones were outdated, and I saw an article that said some company had gotten sued for that, and I was like, oh, shoot. So I called another station manager, and I was like, I think I'm doing something illegal. And then when he laughed, he said, what are you doing? And I explained, he says, oh, shoot, I'm illegal. I'm not doing it, I haven't done it either. So, but at the end of the day, one of the things he said was so good. He said, Joe, It doesn't matter if you should have known. Call and ask, because you're going to create more problems by ignoring that or doing it wrong. Just say, hey, I should have known this, but I didn't know it. And that manager had been in his role for 10 years. So to me, that was an awesome insight to say, hey, there are things that none of us we're not going to know everything. And the same is true in our marriage. So Gary Smalley, when I was first married, I went through this new married class. And Gary Smalley has since passed away, but he had this incredible marriage ministry at the time, at least the program that I went through. And one of the things that he said is that your wife actually holds the key to where your marriage is and where it's going. So at any time, we have this incredible gift to ask our wife, where's our marriage on a scale of 1 to 10? Because we can think, hey, we get to go watch the football game with our friends, we get to do all this, and my wife's not complaining or much, so I have a good marriage, right? I have a good marriage. Where she probably has a much better idea on the barometer of our marriage. So if you ask her on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a scary question, by the way, where's our marriage? If you allow her to be honest, and what I mean by that is if you don't get mad at her and angry in your response and you respond in a very God-honoring way, she will always be honest with you. If you get mad at her and you snap at her, she's not going to be honest with you. Where's our marriage on a scale of 1 to 10 is the first question. And no matter where that number comes in, the next question is, what is your thoughts on how we get to a 10? What could we do? And then you're going to get, if you allow the space for a real conversation, you're going to get some good answers there. Well, I would love it if you spent a little more time with me. I would love it if you turned the TV off at 10 o'clock and we were able to have a conversation before we both. I would love it if we went to bed at the same time. Whatever it is, there will be some. I would love it if you spent 10 minutes over coffee with me. And then you now know what to do. You now have a starting point to say, okay, I can't, and that's getting before God and saying, hey, how do I make that adjustment? Can I make that adjustment? The third D is the door is open. So as leading the team, it's very important for my team, for me as a leader, that they know they can come into my office at any time. So my door is always open. Now there are times, obviously, when you have meetings and stuff, it can't be open. But for the most part, my team knows they can interrupt me at any time. Even though studies show, if you're interrupted in the middle of a task, it takes you 7 minutes. For a 30-second interruption, it takes you 7 minutes to get back to the thought process and where you were. But to me, if I have to stay at work 7 minutes longer because of the interruption, that's okay. That's important that my team understands that they can interrupt and that I'm available to help them. If you send the signal, if I sent the signal to the team that they couldn't interrupt me, they never would. And then we're going to have bigger problems because a lot of times they come in with really easy to solve problems. But if they haven't talked to me about it, like this venue thing, and Drew just went off on his own and started trying to figure it out and couldn't figure it out, and now we're a day out from the event and he hasn't had a venue solve, well, now I can't even help, right? But the fact that he can come into my office at any time and say, hey, I have this thing I'm working through, can you help me with it? So a way to do that, obviously, is to schedule those frequent one-on-ones, and that's what I was talking about with your wife in the morning, to do that. I think the other thing is, even though there are times when the interruption is questionable, like that funny story was probably, maybe not the greatest time for that, I still welcome it. Because I want my team to know that I'm available to help at any time. And the same is true with my wife. If you're in the middle of a TV show or a football game or basketball game and she knows she can't interrupt you, that's not really a good place to be, right? Now there are times where I'm in a meeting with my boss or I'm in a one-on-one or whatever that I don't want to be interrupted unless the building's on fire, right? And so there are times in your life where your wife can't interrupt you. But I think if you live in a posture of saying, my door is open, that changes the dynamic of your marriage. And she's not afraid. One of the areas where I noticed with my wife was she would use phrases like, don't get mad, or when you get time, or I only need a minute. When my wife started saying, I only need a minute, that was an indicator to me that something's off. I shouldn't put her in a box to where she's feeling so pressured with her words that she has to get everything that she needs. And my wife likes to talk, so, which is, I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying she's got a lot of words. But if I put her in a box where she could only do that in a minute, then I'm not being fair to her at all. And so sometimes you'll have to say, honey, I don't have time to discuss this right now, but let's tonight at 8 o'clock, we're going to turn everything off, or once the kids are in bed, or tomorrow morning when we're going to get up early and we're going to have this conversation. Because here's another thing I've learned. I learned this with my kids, but I also recognized it with my wife. When I tucked my kids in bed at night for years, until they were like, Sawyer, I still go into his room. He's 15, and I'll hug him and I'll tell him I love him and we'll pray together and whatever. Right. But when I would tuck my kids in bed at night, there were nights when I needed to move on. There were things I needed to do, and that's okay. But the nights that I allowed the space, the margin to be there, where I just kind of was having goofy conversations with them or doing goofy things with them, about 10 to 15 minutes into that's when the real conversation started. Dad, what do you think about this? Or the things that had been on their hearts for a while that they wanted to share, but they didn't have the space to share it. All of a sudden, they felt safe enough to share that. And I've noticed that with my wife. We have that hour in the morning. Man, those heart-heated, now we're more conditioned for good conversations, so we can lead with something heavy now. We've gotten to a place where we can do that. But in those early days, those conversations that needed to happen didn't come in the first 10 minutes. It came after a little bit of time and margin. So sometimes you'll feel like you're wasting your time, but you're not. You're not wasting your time. You said I do to spend your life with her, right? They need our time, our wives and our kids. And this is something I do in when I'm mentoring younger. I try to have someone that's 10 years older than me in my life, several people, been down the road a little bit, have active growing relationship with Jesus, and I try to have people in my life that are 10 years younger that I can mentor into. And some of the things that I say to these kids, younger people, is that you can't shortcut it. We live in a society where everything is instant gratification, anything we want. You can AI anything these days and you get exactly what you want. You can't shortcut time. You can't do it. You spend 2 minutes with your wife and you AI the conversation to say, okay, these are the bullet points, all of this. It's not going to work. It just isn't. There is no shortcut to time. And then just be available. Make sure your wife knows she's not bothering you. That's the other big one. If your wife thinks she's bothering you, she's not going to bother you. But that's not what you want, right? If she were having a conversation with a friend and saying, I just wish I could talk to my husband, would that hurt you? Would it give you pause? Or would it be like, oh yeah, that's great. She doesn't need to talk to me. It would break my heart, right? I mean, I don't want my wife to feel like she's bothering me by wanting to talk to me. So I think that's just clear communication as well. And that just goes back to a daily check-in. A weekly check-in even if you could only do it once a week. I know schedules sometimes are crazy. Hey, on Saturdays, that's both our days off, we're going to spend an hour together, or we're going to spend 30 minutes together, and it's just going to be you and I. So I think that's extremely important. Fourth D is to dream. So as a manager, it's really important for me to not just have my dreams, right? I feel like God's given me a vision for WCIC, and that's community transformation. I believe that God has put us here for such time as now to work with organizations that are doing extraordinary things to bring forth community transformation. Our vision, our mission is to lead people to Jesus and nurture believers in their spiritual growth. Now, we're a Christian radio station. What do you guys think off the top of your head? Now, in the question itself is going to be the answer, but what percentage of our listeners don't know Jesus? What do you guys think? We're Christian radio. 75. 75% don't know Jesus or know Jesus?
I say they don't really know.
65%. You're very close. 65%. We did a huge perceptual study 2 years ago. 3 years ago, another station very similar to ours, I saw their perceptual study, they asked the exact same question. And our number was 57 at the time, and their number is 65. I believe that our number has also grown. And the way that they got to those answers, that answer was a series of questions like, do you own a Bible? How often do you go to church? Who is Jesus? And they learned that 65% of our audience doesn't own a Bible, goes to church on Christmas and Easter, and doesn't know what it means to spend time with Jesus. But they believe in Jesus. So they say they're Christians. So we have a behind-the-scenes mission. Leading people to Jesus, obviously, is our fourth mission, but we're looking at ways to make sure that we're nurturing believers. That's incredibly important to us, but also looking at how we can win people to Jesus. And so that's why we're doing another Yes Day. In fact, you'll probably be notified to be a part of it if you want. But we did this Yes Day a year ago, and we're going to do 2 of them this year. And our hope is to do them quarterly, and that's the whole day is dedicated to just introducing people to Jesus. We'll have pastors in the building, on the phones, and we'll be leading up to who is Jesus. And then that day, we're going to give listeners an opportunity. We're going to ask our listeners who know Jesus to be praying. And then if you don't know Jesus, want to know more about him, Pastor Paul is here. You can call and talk to him. So that kind of thing. And so that came out of a dreaming meeting. So once a year, I get our team off campus. We go and we have a dreaming meeting. And in that dreaming meeting, there is no bad answers. There's some very silly ones. And we laugh together. But there's nothing bad. We call it green light thinking. You're allowed to green light think, allowed to just think outside the box. And in doing that, it allows us to come up with ideas. I mean, 100 ideas, 99 of them we're not going to use. But that one idea that came out of that, like Yes Day, that's revolutionary. That's amazing. And so one of the questions that I ask our team is, you have millions of dollars. What are you going to do with it for CIC? Money's not an object. Money's not a problem. You can do whatever you want. What do you want to do? What is the passion on your heart? Where has God aligned you? Where does that overlap with the mission that we're doing at CIC? And so we get these crazy, really crazy ideas, like building a pickleball court inside the station. For outreach, of course. But I think it's important to not just do that with our professional teams, to do that also with our wives. To be able to sit down and dream. What are her dreams? What did she give up in saying I do? What has always been on her heart that she has put aside to raise the kids and to be with the kids? What's something that God has put in her that she hasn't been able to talk to you about because she's afraid of bothering you and doesn't have the time? So to ask those questions, what are you dreaming? What's your dream? My wife's dream was Behind Our Smiles. She really wanted, so it started as a blog. She wanted to do a blog. She really wanted to help other couples. We had couples coming to us, and they was way above our pay grade. We had to reference them to other people because we didn't want to give them the wrong advice, and we didn't feel like we still were learning. You know, we weren't in a place. But she said, we have some knowledge of some things that God has taught us. How do we help others? And so she started a blog called Behind Our Smiles. At the time, I was on BGL. I was on every afternoon. And so on Fridays at noon, I would bring her on the show with me. And we would talk about that blog. And that led itself into the podcast that we're doing today. But that was me asking her, what's your dream? What do you want to do? And so that came forward. So I think it's really important, and I think it's wise to ask our wives, what do you want to do? How can I help you grow? What resources do you need to do what you do better? You have dreams with the kids. What am I withholding from you from a resource standpoint to help you with that? We homeschooled our kids. And so curriculum was really important. And trust me, when it came around to curriculum time, I cringed. I'm a ministry salary, one income. I was like, do we have to spend that much? I mean, that's not cheap, but I never wanted to hold back from her being able to execute. And my wife's she loves to thrift. She's very financially conscious, but what resources can we give our wives? And sometimes it's not money. Sometimes it's just our time. I really want to redo our master bedroom. I really want to redo the bathroom. You know, I really want to volunteer at church. I really want to make a difference. I want to invest in this ministry. So there are things that we can do that aren't, don't have to do with money. Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain or conceit, but rather in humility value others above ourselves, right? Not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. I need to lean into her strengths because she also helps me. In fact, we often shut down. I've got this, I saw this, Tara and I had talked about this a while ago, but it resurfaced, this quote, and I wanted to share this with you. We often shut down the dreaming together. When I shut down her ideas, so our second podcast episode is called That Won't Work. And we did that on purpose to say, this whole podcast thing won't work. That's not gonna work. But the reason is because the first 10 years of our marriage, you know what the most common, my wife would be like, hey, I have this idea. And she's halfway through the idea, you know what's coming out of my mouth? Here's why that won't work. Or vice versa. And that shut down so much dreaming. It shut it down. So what we decided is we're gonna replace that won't work with, that's a great idea. Tell me more. And that is revolutionized because one of the other areas, that is when you're having a moment where your wife wants to have a conversation with you or wants to do something she's being vulnerable with you, and we tell her that won't work, that's damaging. And I didn't realize that I was damaging my wife with that. And so by shifting to that's a great idea, and here's how that works. Paul has an idea. He says it. Your wife has a great idea. We'll just go that way. Your wife has a great idea. You say that's a great idea. Tell me more. As she begins to describe the idea, if it's not a good idea, she's going to realize it pretty quick. She's going to come to that conclusion on her own. And that happens probably more for us than it does for them because there's been many times I've had an idea and my wife's like, that's a great idea. Inside she's going, I don't know. Tell me more. And I say, so as I'm beginning to tell her more, I'm like, you know what? There's no way that's going to work. She doesn't even have to tell me, I say it. But you know what's awesome about that? Then she goes, yes, but what about this? And now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And we have come up with some, I'm just telling you, I could give you examples of ideas that have come to pass that would never have happened had we not shifted that. And we had a friend who listens to the podcast who emailed Tara and just said, I got to tell you, my husband came to me with an idea right after I listened to that episode. My husband came to me with this idea that I'm going to put a car wash in our garage. And she said, I so badly wanted to say that won't work. But instead she says, tell me more. And they did not put a car wash in their garage. And I'm almost done here. I know we're running out of time. So in a long-term study that was done, over 130 couples of this long-term study, here's what they discovered. Even within the first few months of marriage, men who allow their wives to have influence over them have happier marriages and are less likely to divorce and actually are more successful in their workplace. Isn't that interesting? There is an 81% chance that your marriage will fail if you do not allow your wife to speak into your marriage and have influence over you. I cannot tell you how many times I would have walked out of the house wearing the wrong thing and looked pretty stupid if it weren't for my wife. Or how many times decisions at work, I come home and I don't share it, dump everything on her, but I'm very open and say, hey, I'm struggling in this one area. I want to love this person well, and I don't know how to execute this, and we'll talk it through, and she has some brilliant ideas. And not that we're sharing, you got to be careful with your workspace stuff, I get that. But any leadership things that with vision, things that I'm working through, my own air manager spots, those types of devotional things that I'm working through, I always bounce it off her because she's very, very brilliant when it comes to that kind of stuff. Okay, the final D is to develop a support system. And a support system is extremely important. And I had referenced earlier on about my boss and how he said, Joe, you have a support system here. You do not have to carry that. We're going to help you be successful. But I have to tap into that. If I just said, oh, I got a great support system, but I never reach into it or never say I'm in trouble or say, hey, I need help, then they're not going to be able to help me. So I love that. I didn't know it. In fact, here's the funny thing about WCIC. One of my key things that I need to do is fundraise, because we are a listener-supported station. I literally told my boss in the interview, I'm a terrible fundraiser. I don't like asking for money. I don't like doing it. I wish we never had to do it. I felt really weird. I was on the air all year ministering to people, and then I had to go ask them for money. I hated it. And he said, it's not about fundraising. It's about encouraging people to trust God with their finances. We are asking for money because you have not, because you ask not, and we need money to fund the ministry. But more importantly, I want to see you grow. So I want to see you. So our goal, and when we pray over our and that's why we do ministry days. We partner with local organizations right in the middle of our fundraiser. We raise funds for another organization because we want community transformation. But also, we believe as people trust God with their finances, they'll trust Him in a lot of other areas. So if we encourage you to trust with your finances and you give to your local church, that's a win for us. Even if we don't see a dime of the money, because we believe that God will bring that wherever it needs to come from. So the same is true with your marriage. My notes went away. There we go. Having a support system. What you're doing this weekend is a perfect support system. Being around other men. Being able to invest in them and allow them to invest in you. Especially those, and when you talk about investing in your life, active growing relationship with Jesus. Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they have it all figured out, because none of us do. It just means that they have an active growing relationship with Jesus. All right, I know we're basically done because I got the little signal that I have gone over. I just want to make sure there's any, last thing I'll say. If you apply those 5 Ds in practice, I am a living proof that there are amazing rewards in that. There are amazing rewards. You will see your wife in a completely different way. She will become the amazing person that you dated and married. If she's not already, she will become that or even more so. I think I have like 2 minutes left. Any questions? Yes.
Out of the 65%, are those 65% trying to find? Because I just started listening to that station probably like months ago. And I'm on my journey trying to find them too, but I'm just wondering if...
In that research, so for us it was 57%, 65% for this other station. So we're adapting to 65% because we believe that's where it's at. Those people said, I'm very content in knowing that Jesus is God, but not having a Bible, not going to church. I don't need that. That's basically what they were saying. So we're trying to shine a light on the idea that, wait a minute, just saying Jesus is God that's not enough. If you want
to the music doesn't mean,
right.
I got you.
If you want real hope, which is what we're wanting to share hope, real hope, not wishful. Hey, I hope the Cubs win the World Series again. I know that's wishful thinking, right? Yeah, but hey, we have 2016, and that was awesome. But hope is very different when the Bible talks about hope, rising up on wings like eagles, right? In Isaiah, hope, that's what we want to share. And the only way that you're going to find hope is in a growing relationship with Jesus. That's the only place it exists. And this world right now is dying for hope. People you see it. It's all around us. The world is darker than it's ever been. And so the light of Jesus shines brighter. And so if you've ever driven by our station, we have the word hope above our station, lit up at night. And the city told us we couldn't do that because it was advertising. This was prior to 2020. We're like, advertising? How's that advertising? It says hope. And so in 2020, I was told that I needed to not leave that on because the city is going to come and we're going to have trouble. Well, I've had it on every night since COVID, and it still shines. You can drive on 150 there and you can see it. And that was, people before me had the vision to put that up, and I love it. But the idea is that we're broadcasting hope, and the darker the world gets, the brighter the hope that we have is. So I don't know if that answers your question. Any other questions? I know we got to go, right? One more question? Nothing?